Hi everyone, it's Danny. Okay, today we're going to discuss about how to water Oncidium orchids or Oncidium hybrids. Their care is pretty similar and the way you would water them is again very similar if not identical. So I will start by discussing some preferences that Oncidium orchids have when it comes to watering. Now, usually Oncidiums don't like to dry out too much in between waterings. Now, contrary to popular beliefs, Oncidium orchids really don't like to dry out in between waterings, even though they do have the pseudobulbs to store water and nutrients. The thing is, they can withstand drought much better because of the pseudobulbs, but the reality is, if you keep them way too dry, your Oncidium orchids will definitely not look good, and you will have problems further on. Now, my example here is a bit overdue for a watering. A few signs to show you that this orchid needs some water are wrinkly pseudobulbs. Hopefully you can see this. This pseudobulb should have looked something like this. This one is starting to get a few wrinkles as well. So when you see this on your orchid and you know the roots are healthy, there's only one problem. You don't water your Oncidium orchid enough. If you can take a look at the media and at the root system, you will notice when your orchid needs some water. When the media is almost dry, but it still seems to be slightly moist, it is a perfect time to water an Oncidium orchid. If the media, however, is bone dry, this is your cue to water as soon as you can. As I was saying, not watering an Oncidium orchid in time can result in some problems, and I have the perfect example here. One of the outcomes of a dehydrated Oncidium or an Oncidium that wasn't watered in time is wrinkled or accordion-shaped leaves. And hopefully you can see here how these leaves look like. They should never look like this. They should be perfectly straight in good conditions. Not watering in time can definitely cause this. Low humidity can cause this as well, but mainly not watering in time. Now, because the leaves are crinkly, the flower spike might not have room to grow, so you might actually kill a flower spike because you do not see it in time and you cannot free it from the very accordion-shaped leaves. So these are the few problems that may arise if you don't water an Oncidium orchid in time. Not to mention, the orchid will probably not be very happy, the new growths might be smaller than the previous ones, and so on. Now, because Oncidium orchids like to stay evenly moist, we call it like that, we usually use a mixture of sphagnum moss and bark chips. Now, this will really depend on your environment. If your environment is very humid and water does not evaporate so fast, you can grow an Oncidium orchid in a coarse media like bark chips. But if your environment is rather dry or rather warm and actually water evaporates very fast, it is a good idea to use a combination of a water retentive media like sphagnum moss and some bark chips for aeration, because in the end this orchid is an epiphyte and it needs moisture, but it also needs a lot of ventilation. For this reason, I like to use extra ventilation holes in my pots. If you know my videos, you know that most of my orchids have this, and for me it works really great with Oncidiums. They're pretty easy to handle. I don't have to water way too often, but the pot still dries out in about 5 to 10 days. Depends on my environment and depends on the season. Okay, now I will show you how I like to water my Oncidium orchids. Now, in the summertime, my environment gets really dry and it gets really warm. This makes water evaporate faster than in the wintertime. For this reason, I like to soak orchids in the summertime. To do so, I try to find a bowl or a decorative ceramic pot, whatever I have at hand, place the orchid inside. I get a can of water and actually fill the decorative pot to the brim of the clear plastic pot in which this orchid is potted in. As you might notice, my Oncidium orchids are not potted too deep into the media. The pseudobulbs are on top of the media. If your orchid is potted slightly deeper than this, you might want to go 1 centimeter below the brim of the plastic pot. It just depends on your orchid, but it is a good idea to pot your Oncidium orchids above the media. And then I like to leave this orchid sit in water for about 10 minutes. So the roots get properly soaked, the media soaks in some water as well. As you know, bark does not retain that much water. So in about 10 minutes or 15 minutes, depends how I remember to come back, I will remove the orchid from the water. After about 10 minutes, my orchid is properly hydrated. So what I do now is I remove it from the container with water, let it drain a little bit, and then place it on a separate tray or separate dish to drain all the excessive water. After a few minutes, the excessive water has drained, and I can now place this orchid back in its place. If you keep it hanging, you can place it back where it was. If you keep it in a decorative pot, make sure you remove all the water in the decorative pot. Now in the winter time, because my temperatures are colder and also I have higher humidity in my growing space, I don't need to soak the orchids, because if I would soak them, they would stay moist for way too long. So for this reason, I would just bring them to the sink or use my watering can, but just pour water on top of the media, just like this, so no soaking needed. Again, I would leave the orchid to drain very well in a separate dish, and when all the excessive water is drained, I would just place back my orchid. And that's about it on watering Oncidium orchids. The bottom line is that you don't need to let your Oncidium orchids stay dry for long periods of time. When you notice that the media is still slightly moist, it is a good time to water. If you cannot see through the plastic pot, just insert a finger, and when you pull it out and you see it's barely moist, it is a good time to water your Oncidium. The frequency of watering will depend on your environment and your potting media. As I said, the more humid or cold your environment is, the slower the water will evaporate. So I cannot tell you that you should water once a week or once every 3 days or once every month or anything like that. You need to observe your Oncidium orchid, and in time you'll kind of know intuitively when the media should be almost dry and when you should water your orchid. Alrighty, so I hope you found this useful, and I have to say I'm really sorry about the noises outside. This summer will be very complicated with filming because they're renovating the road across the street. But anyway, if this bothers you, let me know in a comment, and I will try to record audio in the nighttime or something like that. I don't know. Really sorry about the noise, but I hope you managed to understand what I told you. Alrighty, so if you want to see more videos from me, don't forget to subscribe. You can leave me comments, suggestions, or questions in the comment section below. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and also you can visit orchidnature.com for care sheets, identifications, and forums. Alrighty, so I'll see you next time. Bye!